It's live. It's now. It's on your personal computer. It's Baggy Hi-Fi. Greetings, cats and kittens. Welcome once again to Baggy Hi-Fi, this YouTube channel devoted to record collecting and the vinyl community here in the UK. But I think you know the drill by now. So welcome to this latest video. It should be a fairly brief one, but it will have a few needle drops in it. It's going to focus on a record fair, a very local record fair. I live in a smallish town in County Durham, in the northeast of England, and this town does have two record shops, or at least one's a music shop that sells musical instruments, and then it has a section for used vinyl, which doesn't really get replenished very often. And the other shop is mostly devoted to dance records, sort of house music and all that. But in the corner sometimes has some stuff which might interest me, but I never seem to know these days when the shop is open, because days can go by and he doesn't seem to open. And I think maybe he's concentrating on mail order, because I've seen the guy that runs it in the post office with stacks of LP mailers, so I guess he does quite a lot of trade through Discogs. So yeah, so we're not really very well served for record shops here, and I don't think, in my memory, I can't remember there being a record fair here. We usually have to go to Newcastle upon Tyne or maybe Durham for a record fair, and I haven't been to a record fair in probably 2 years now, since well before the pandemic. So I was really quite excited to see on social media that there was going to be a record fair within walking distance of where I live at a village hall. So I was excited, but I wasn't really expecting too much, because I read that it only had 5 dealers, so I thought it was going to be pretty small, and I thought it might be just very, very local people just, flogging some not very interesting records. So I went along, and it was last Sunday. I didn't have that much time. I only had about an hour to spare to have a look around the record fair. So I went along to the village hall, which is sort of a nice 1920s building which has been refurbished lately. And I was quite surprised to see, yes, there were 5 vendors, 5 sellers, but they had quite a lot of boxes to have a look through. And I was there probably about 10-15 minutes after it had opened, and it was fairly full of people looking through the records. And so it did turn out to be better than I expected, but I only bought 3 records, so that's what this video is going to be. The 3 records I bought at the record fair. And also I'm just going to add on a bonus at the end of our record which arrived this week, which sort of ties in with some of the UK pop psych that I was showing in my last video. But onto what I found at the record fair. Well, there was one nice, probably the best stall was a guy who had quite a lot of interesting reissues, but also some original 60s and 70s records, which were mostly quite interesting. But the one that caught my eye was this one, which is a prog album that never had much attention when it came out in 1972 on the Penny Farthing label originally. So the band are Steel Mill, and the record is Green Eyed God. And there's the members of Steel Mill. So this was issued in 1972 originally, and it's been reissued here on a label called, I imagine a very small label called Trading Places. So I mentioned that this is quite proggy, but it's also fairly heavy. You can imagine that these fellas were listening to a bit of Black Sabbath, so there's a bit of riffage on here. But they also have a flute player, or woodwind player, called John Challenger, who plays flute, but he also sounds like he's playing recorder. So there are some gentle moments on here as well. The whole thing has a quite sort of naive quality to it. You can imagine why it wasn't really successful at the time, and why it's become the original copies have become a rarity. The subject matter of the song seems to be quite sort of fantasy leaning. Tracks like Green Eyed God, Black Jewels of the Forest, Blood Runs Deep, Mijo and the Laying of the Witch. So it's the kind of thing that gets fans of early 70s prog excited. I wouldn't say this is a 5-star album, although it is a 4-star album. The singing's a bit weak, as I say, that there's a naive quality to it. It's not that confident. Anyway, the seller said when I picked this one up, he said that he once had an original copy of this, and about 10 years ago, and he was very happy to sell it for £140. But apparently, original copies of this obscure prog item are now worth about £3,000. So he's not so chuffed with his sale of this one. So I'm going to do a needle drop of this. Quite a nice sub Salvador Dali painting on the front, very appropriate for a prog album. So that's Green Eyed God by Steel Mill. Now this next record I had actually streamed, and I was thinking of ordering a copy online because I've noticed that there were a series of compilations of Polish psychedelia or psych beat 60s to the early 70s. This is volume 2 of that series, and the series is called Working Class Devils, Fuzz, Vodka and Flowers, Polish Psychobeat 1965 to 1972. And look at that sleeve. So when I managed to knock the seller's price down on this one, because I don't think there were that many fans of Polish psych there that day, so I think he was quite pleased to shift this one to a sucker like myself. But look at that psychedelic sleeve, and the seller did comment that you can just tell what the music's going to be like by looking at the sleeve. So there's the bands on the back. It's not sort of all strictly psych, I wouldn't say. There's some sort of garage beat numbers, which are probably the earlier ones from 65, and there's some that are a bit more 70s sounding and some that are a little bit more commercial sounding, but it's a really interesting compilation. And when I mentioned later on in the afternoon that I'd been to a record fair to a friend and that I bought an album of Polish psychedelia, he just shook his head. Anyway, there's some interesting notes there on the artist, which I'm not going to attempt to pronounce. So that's volume 2 of Working Class Devils, Fuzz, Vodka and Flowers, Polish Psychobeat 1965 to 1972. And the next record, I'm sure you know the band, and when I saw this one I thought I'd better buy it because it's the only album by this band that I don't own in their original releases, and it's Bonzo Dog Band, and it's their final original album from 1972, Let's Make Up and Be Friendly. This is I think this is a reissue, maybe 70s 80s reissue on the Sunset label, so it's not an original, but this was quite cheap. And the story is with this one that the band Bonzo Dog Band discovered that they were obliged to make a final album for their recording contract, so they got together to make this one, but it doesn't sound like a contractual obligation album, I don't think. The ultimate art school band, really, I would say, and probably the most successful band I know, who most successfully combined music and humour, I think. And especially humour of that period. I think Monty Python hasn't stood up well. I think the humour in Frank Zappa lets his music down. It's quite off-putting. I only really like Frank Zappa and the Mother's Invention when they're being instrumental, because I think the humour is just really dated badly. But the humour in the Bonzos stands up really well. I think by this stage, I don't think any other albums are very cohesive, because they had such strong characters in the band, you know, such characters as Vivian Stanshall, of course, and Neil Innes, the great late Neil Innes. And their particular styles come forward quite strongly on this record. So, for example, Neil Innes is really indulging his Beatles pastiches here, which would later flower into the Rutles. And also Vivian Stanshall debuts the first part of his Rawlinson End saga, spoken word saga, on here, and that is really great to hear. So yeah, I think this is a very strong final original album by the Bonzo Dog Band from 1972, and they do a little bit of farewell on there by saying "Dada" for now. Yet another art school pun there. But yeah, very nice. So they were the 3 records I bought at the record fair. I'm going to do some needle drops now, and then I'll be back after those with just a reissue, a Psych Pop reissue, which arrived in the house this week. Now on to the bonus material of this video, because as I only bought 3 records at the record fair, I thought I need to throw in another album, and this is one that came through the post this week. I think I got it from Juno Records, whose delivery is very quick. And I was really pleased to see that there was a compilation of this band, who I was a little bit familiar with from some psych compilations, especially the Bam Caruso Rubble series. I always remember being quite knocked out by the tune The Wedding of Ramona Blair by this band. A great pop tune. very much of the period. And the band are the Mirage. And the compilation here is called You Can't Be Serious, 1966 to 1968. It's a nice flip back sleeve. It's on the Gerson label, which I think is a German label, which has been doing some really interesting compilations and reissues lately. Yeah, so The Wedding of Ramona Blair is on here. They were a band from Hertfordshire, England, and they recorded quite a few singles. But they signed up to Dick James Publishing, and they were supported by the Hollies at one point, and Graham Nash, I think, wrote a song for them. So they weren't, you know, terribly obscure. That I think big things were expected of them, but that never really happened, as is the case with many of these British bands of the period. You know, there's a lot of competition at the time. So a nice booklet here about their career, how they signed to Dick James Publishing. And it is true that they do sound a little bit like the Hollies at times, but they also sound very like that band you might know called the Beatles. And there's a version of here of Tomorrow Never Knows. But the needle drop I'm going to play is very, very Beatlesque. In fact, it's almost a pastiche or a rip-off of the Beatles' Rain, which is, of course, one of their greatest moments. But see what you think about it. The track is called Lazy Man by the Mirage. Very much recommend this compilation if you like British pop psych. It's very strong, some good tunes on here. Ebenezer Beaver, Hello Enid, Mrs. Busby. It's all very charming, quite whimsical at times. Some great vocals, some great harmonies on there. So that's the last record I'm going to show in this video, and I'll see you soon. So bye for now.